first and foremost, we have the founder and CEO of for the Center of Applied Data Science, Ms. Sharala, or short form for SHA. She has got over 15 years of experience in the telecommunication field, and award-winning entrepreneur Ms. Shah has also established the Center of Applied Data Science as a platform for data, analytics, and as well as AI. She has also brought the Data Incubator and Harvard Business School programs to Malaysia and launched ASEAN's first Data Science Accelerator program.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, Alvin. And good day, everybody. I am excited to, it's really amazing to be able to work with CHRO and Kincentric to start talking about, not a new topic, data-driven, but the most important thing today, we're going to talk about why is it important for CHROs to prepare for the future of work, that there's been billions of dollars being spent on upskilling, and what is it more that needs to be done, why upskilling alone is not enough. So thank you for having me, and I'm going to start my first slide by saying to every CHRO there, think like a CEO before acting like a CHRO. And I think that's a very, very important statement to make, because CHROs have become the most important element in the whole Industry 4.0 journey that's been taking over. And then on top of that, post-COVID-19, the new norm has brought forward, any of the effort to do this. We cannot wait any longer. So what is a great and highly effective way of how human resources heads and C-levels can work on this, right? One of the biggest challenge that CHROs have is, I've got a long-term strategy and demands to do that. How do I go digital? How do I get my people data-driven? But at the same time, how do I manage the short term? So as much as everybody's investing in the long term, I think it's also important for CHROs to look at short-term goals that can benefit the long-term demands that we need to put in place. Now, the other part that in the past, which I like to say Industry 2.0, Industry 3.0, human capital is never really involved in change process of businesses. But now we want digital leaders. We want businesses to be digital. So everything that the business requires needs a real input and involvement of the CHRO and the team itself. Again, in the past, technologies are investments from CIO, and they would buy products, and you expect to click a button and solve world hunger. But with Industry 4.0 and with this data-driven organization, having the talent to man those equipments and the products and the infra that you have bought becomes really important. Last but not least, right? I mean, you hear this, and we always hear this, culture has been there for the longest, for whatever reason that you need to build a great company. But a culture that lives, breathes, and acts data becomes a different culture altogether that we all struggle. How do you unlearn to learn this new way of working and learning and doing things? So having said that, a small summary here that we got from Gartner. So this is one of the biggest struggle that all CIOs have, or CSOs, where they want to get into this digital journey and they want to invest in the company. And the biggest gap, as you can see, it's always, the CFO, of course. I have a CFO who's never happy to spend money. Okay, so that's reality. But then the investment is needed. And the other gap, which we never see that in Industry 2.0 or 3.0, is getting the buy-in and the agility of the Chief Human Resource Officer. So this is very much in sync with what we've seen over the years around the world and also around this region. And I think Gartner just nailed it by having this in a nice graph. Just to bring back, thoughts and memories to all of us. So what is this data-driven organization? I've heard about digitalization, and probably the word DDO, data-driven organization, probably has been overused. So I'm just going to give you an idea that, what people are looking at, right? Today's business, and everyone wants to become digital business. You've heard airlines saying that we are not airlines, we are tech companies. And we have heard banks saying that we are not, banking sector anymore, we are tech company. And what does that mean? So in the journey of becoming, taking today's business to a digital business, what is really key in this whole transformation is what we call the digital transformation. But digital transformation is so wide, so abstract. A lot of us think that digital transformation means a 3-year investment plan to change your infra, right? And that's how it was, I think, the early 2012. But it's very important that what happens when you do a digital transformation is what you become as an organization. You become a data-driven organization. Now, what does that entail? A data-driven organization here entails data and analytics. And from that, there's 3 categories that you need to look at, is to have the strategy in place. And we talked about the infra technology and then the execution. That is what's going to be the differentiator. So in a nutshell, when everybody talks about becoming a digital company, a digital business, people always think that, we have to do digital marketing and invest in huge amount of infra. But ultimately what it becomes is strategy, having the technology, and having the execution that makes it, sustainable, okay? So what allows us to be sustainable about this? So in CATS, we have patented this model, and we will have Dr. Stam talk this in much details, but I'm going to give you the 6 pillars, or 6 beehives we call it, and why these 6 pillars are really important. Now, it is a big issue in any organization, being small, big, or even government, sectors, that people drive analytics and work on silos, right? Everybody, like HR folks will be doing HR analytics, and then the finance persons are doing financial analytics, and then you have the risk department, and that's all fine and great, and please continue doing that. But what happens that when everybody works in silo, how do you get an organization to move forward in a smooth way? So in some ways, how do you get an elephant to fly? How do you sync all this huge, animal, which is strong and, fast, but to sync and get it to fly or to perform, we call that. So very important to look at strategy. Now, we know data-driven organization is a top-down strategy. So it's very important for the C-levels to have that as a business strategy and to put it in place. And the key things, right, organization and talent, is the culture in the company set right for this change? Are people willing to share data? Are people using data to make decisions? This has to be an everyday, situation that you eat and breathe and talk data. As an organization, the culture becomes really important. And then do we have the skills? Now, we have seen over and over again, people have spent monies, millions of dollars investing in infra, only to find much later not having the talent to build the cases and put the data in. Technology is given, yeah? The question is, how and when do I invest in technology? What kind of technology does the company need? And that is why getting the strategy, the culture, and the people in the company to be able to say, we would require this kind of product, this kind of tool in order to make our lives much more digital and data-driven. Point number 5, data. How does our data achieve our strategic objectives? Now we talk about garbage in, garbage out. We talk about, do we have the right data? Do we need to beg, borrow, and steal more data? And I say that with a pinch of salt, but knowing what data you have, and whether that's enough and you need to complement it with other data, that's very important to look at that and cleaning up your data, yeah? And last but not least, again, right, analytics, how capable our analytics practices are, governance and a lot more that needs to be put in place. But you don't have to be matured in all these 6 pillars, because it's based on the strategy that few of your pillars need to be enabled in order for you to move and align as a, you know, as a whole. And what has most companies have already implemented out there or looking at implementing out there is what we call an augmented strategy. Now, I said earlier, and I'll repeat it again, upskilling is really, really important. And that's the only way that we're going to move forward. But upskilling alone is not enough. So you have these people who have been skilled up, and they all are ready with different skill. But if the business is not aligned, if the business doesn't understand what kind of skill that's required for their business, now again you're going to have a mismatch in your company. So that is why we think that, you know, it's important to talk about it now. Upskill your people, get the people with the right skill, but then what are you going to use them for, and how does it apply to your strategy? Then you can have the return of investment you're looking for. So the augmented strategy, with a quick brief, I would like to say that it's mentioned in the World Economic Forum, where they predict that 54% of a workforce in a company needs to be upskilled. And then we're talking about 30% of their jobs to be automated. Now, I say automated and not replaced. Okay, so anything that's repetitive, anything that, you know, keeps you in the office till 12 midnight, it should be automated, so you can have, you know, you can have a more effective workforce in your team. And then the 16% that's left should be new hires with new skills that you cannot or you won't be able to find within your organization. So I've got 10 minutes, and I don't know how much I've spoken now, but this is going to be my last slide. So this is what I would like to leave you with. Insights for any company becomes a competitive, you know, advantage. Organizations with a culture that breathes and talks and acts on the data, this is a proven data that it will outperform those who don't. I mean, you know, the Fortune 500 companies that we've seen in a decade, right? All the oil and gas, and all of them are no more in the Fortune 500. Every one of them are a tech company. First time in our lives, we have seen $1 trillion companies making it to the Fortune 500. So that's all is only possible because these companies live, breathe, and act on data. So building the right pillars to have a sustainable business. So investment is always one thing which is needed. But end of the day, whatever business you're in, you need to keep it sustainable and affordable. And that's the investment you need to do today in order to have that sustainable business, you know, to survive the world of Industry 4.0, yeah? Okay, so with that, I thank you. That's my last slide. And Alvin?
Thanks, Shah. I think it was a wonderful session. Thanks for sharing so much in that little space. I think definitely COVID-19 has clearly pushed us and various organizations to quicken and hasten the transformation process itself, moving us from a traditional brick and mortar into a digital business itself. You know, and this is clearly something that we are seeing across the whole entire world, not only here in Singapore. Last but not least, let me bring on board Andrew. Andrew Howe, as I said, you know, is the country leader for Indonesia and Singapore at Kincentric itself, who could share a little more on how organizations could actually use data and what is it needed from a talent perspective as well. Andrew, over to you.
Well, can you see me? Very good afternoon to all of you. Very nice to be on this forum with CHRO and Center for Applied Data. Today, my topic is really to look at the people aspects of the whole digital transformation. Before going into that, I think a lot of organizations have started embarking on the whole data transformation and digital transformation journey. But not all of them are successful. There are successful case studies that a lot of organizations are talking about, but there are a lot of companies that's tried but find it very difficult to embark on this transformation. So I'm going to share with you some of the observations and maybe some of the issues that they face when embarking on this transformation, and maybe share a bit some of my personal experience working with some of these organizations. Yeah, right. So as I mentioned, a lot of organizations are transforming the business. If you don't transform, you're going to be disrupted by different technologies. Small players are coming in to eat the market share, or you create better customer experience. So all these are different reasons or different what we call challenges that organizations are going through. Looking at how to redefine a better customer experience. You see retail organization going into apps to kind of give better experience for the customers to experience as they move into different on the online or e-commerce business and the retail business. So all these are evolving, and products and services are also changing the expectation of the different consumers, and also educating different consumers on the possibility of doing very different things and experiencing very different services. One of my clients that I work with, who operated a very brick and mortar retail business, acquired a e-commerce business, and over the first year of acquisition, it was almost 2 organizations operating in a very siloed environment, not sharing and so forth. Until the new CEO coming on board, trying to create a more integrated customer experience between the retail business and the e-commerce business, and trying to create what we call an omni-channel experience, where shoppers can buy stuff over the internet, but also test some of the products out in the retail, one of the e-retail outlets. So creating this experience across customer experience is definitely something that will create a very different skill sets of people that's needed in an organization. You have also organizations in the manufacturing sector that's trying to implement Industry 4.0 concepts, Internet of Things with sensors, face technology, and so forth. All these are great technology, and a lot of money has been invested into it. But not all of them are, how should I say, successful, because of a few different reasons. In Singapore, I mean, I see a lot of organizations, if you look at the Business Times, have put on great headlines around pushing the whole digital transformation across different sectors and economies. A lot of money and grants have been made available for SMEs to gain digital access into technology platforms. You have public sector pushing the whole sector around the right data architecture, creating the smart nation concept. You have big companies also helping getting employees digitally ready. And this only happened over maybe the last, I just took this over the last 1-2 years, but it's really a great push that's being pushed on by Singapore government and also Singapore organization to really try to lead the whole digital transformation race. But a lot of those changes and investments are huge, and it's really putting the technology into organization takes a huge infrastructure, it takes a huge commitment of resources and time. But some of the studies that shown, Gartner and a few others, has shown that a lot of these big investments are critical, and organizations view that 96% of the organization view that it's a critically important agenda in the strategy. But surprisingly, a lot of organizations, to the percentage of 84%, that feel that the organization do not have the right skill sets or even capabilities to deliver on the digital ambition. So it's really quite a huge statistics if you look at it, that companies do want to invest in technology, but they struggle because of the skills and capability. 2 factors that came up quite significantly is around the people factor. And what aspects of the people factor? The whole resistance to the new ways of working, the new ways of looking at how digital transformation is going to need to change their work behaviors, or even the mindset of how they approach and do things. And that's a huge barrier if an organization were to kind of want to invest into this, because you have spending a lot of money into data and platforms, and you find people not having the right mindset to want to execute it. the other big barrier that comes out in the study shows that data adoption in terms of the kind of technology platforms, but also the way the organization align their enterprise or the organization in order to use or make use of data is another huge barrier towards the successful implementation of some of these technology changes. And when we talk about organization alignment, what do we mean by that? I guess it talks a few things. One is really around how the organization looks at data. Is there a larger data strategy that's enterprise-wide? Because a lot of some of these organizations started moving into the data platform through individual functions or individual the entrepreneur spirit of individual businesses, or each individual functions wants to kind of look at how they can advance in the whole data transformation journey. But it's not done in a more cohesive way. So you do have different pockets of initiative being created. This is good in a sense, it gets it started. But going forward, as an enterprise, it's quite difficult if you don't have the kind of alignment or the kind of speed or the kind of data architecture that will kind of support the whole change. So people and data adoption are probably two of the things that is coming out to show that a lot of the organizations are failing or stalling or struggling in order to move the needle. People and culture is another big aspect of digital transformation. So I'll talk a bit more about people and culture. I kind of zoom into three major areas. I guess will be some of the areas that I want to focus on. The first is around digital leaders with a very data mindset. What do I mean by data mindset? I mean, I'm using digital and data in a different way. In this part, I want to mention data because it's actually the ability of leaders not just to adopt a technology, but to use the data. The gut feel of leaders are usually around relying on, how should I say, their own experience as a business entrepreneur, or even their business, their experience to actually drive the business. But a leader with a more data mindset or data agenda will probably ask, what does the data show? Or what other data supports my judgment? And that's something that's probably missing if I look at it in some organization where a lot more trust is around how the experience of the leader to drive the business agenda as opposed to using data. Oops, I'm going to speed up a bit more. The other one is really around the digital talents, the ability to identify digital talent based on digital literacy and aptitude. I mean, do you have the right people or aptitude in an organization to drive the digital talent, and the right leadership and skills? And the last one is around creating a culture of digital data transformation. One thing I want to mention just around here is around the whole data ownership part and silo is going to be critical from my experience earlier. And the ability to break free from this fear of failure, an innovative culture, is a part that kind of stops or prevents organization from proper adoption. So I think a lot of these points I hope we can kind of talk a bit more during the Q&A, but I want to throw this out as a discussion that I see these are three critical components, ingredients that will kind of help move the people and culture aspect of digital transformation.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for showing us all the necessary details and the data itself. Just let me bring on board Stan from the Center of Applied Data Science. Stan, just a quick one, over to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. Okay, I will try to keep it short because I think we had some very interesting presentations earlier, and I'm sure that you have a lot of questions basically that we would like to ask the two previous speakers. What I would like from you is just to see a few things on the survey that basically we would like you to participate. This is based on our model that we have created within CADS in order to plan of what should be the steps for any data-driven organization to mature. Shah earlier discussed about the different dimensions of the model that we're using. We have 6 dimensions. The model that we have created actually is looking at different practices that are typical in performed data-driven organizations, and they are reflected into the different dimensions that we have. For example, your organization, what is the structure? Both of our speakers talk about, for instance, silos, okay, and we need to break them. Do we have data sharing, information sharing? Okay, this is important practices that we need to understand if they are used within your organization. For talent, are we looking on the type of the capabilities of the people? Do they need to be upskilled? For data, what is the data quality? Are we sure that the insights we get are trusted, can be trusted? Okay, this is a major thing that always you need to take into consideration when you work, when you when you start your DDO journey, is the data quality, okay? Because if you're not sure that the data that you're using for your insights is not accurate, then of course you cannot trust on them. Analytics, okay, what type of analytics the organization is using? Just very simple descriptive statistics, or we are moving basically to more advanced, like doing predictions, okay? Especially within HR analytics, predictive analytics are very important. For instance, to understand if what are the causes of your potential turnover, or if you want to identify individuals within your organization that are potential flight risks. Okay, these are some very interesting prediction analytics that you can create. Technology is always there. Okay, for me is just an enabler. Okay, this is pretty much of what the other speakers also discussed, is that we should never focus on technology, but more having the technology as an enabler to our DDO journey. Effectively, what type of technologies basically we are using? Is it something very simple, like just Excel files, for instance, or something a bit more elaborated, like any type of cloud-based technologies? And also, depending on our organization, the technologies that we may use may need to have real-time, for instance, capabilities on non-real-time capabilities and things like that. And finally is the strategy. Okay, that's where everything starts and finishes basically, is whatever we do, it must fit within the overall strategy of the organization, either to become a data-driven organization of what basically we want to achieve. The DDO, the benefits of a DDO can be everywhere. Okay, it can be in improving, let's say, the cost by automating certain aspects of processes, or we can make things more effective. Okay, and basically we need to understand from the strategy point of view, what is the goal that we want to achieve? Is it just to become more cost efficient, or we want the insights of the DDO to help us in, for instance, identifying new market opportunities or creating new products altogether? This is critical because at the core of the DDO, you have data, okay? And the good thing and the fantastic thing now, these days, is that there are a lot of data out there that is just available for you to analyze them and find different ways of using them in order to make your life easier. And this is something that the strategy has to take into consideration of how basically we want to use this data. All right. Now, the questions, as we said, that we'll go through this from the, already. And the last thing that I would like, sorry, is it? Okay, we will discuss about the maturity levels. Now, just to wrap it up, I advise you basically to go and participate in the maturity assessment. It is very straightforward. Okay, you will see it's just 42 questions, very simple basically to complete. Okay, we have online instructions of how to complete it. And the important thing is that what you are going to get for every organization is basically a customized report that contains a lot of information about what is the current state of your organization and what would be the future. And also information about what is basically the best practices that you already have in place, what potentially are areas to improve. And in addition, you're going to have information of what is what the other competitors in your industries actually are doing. Some industry benchmarking information will be also there. And that would be the end for me. Okay.
What is the greatest fear for CHRO to embark on a DDO journey? Do they know what the CEO wants to begin with?
I think that, we see it over and over again. We've seen it in ASEAN. We've seen one of the biggest banks. Now, the kind of CHROs that have been existent for the longest are traditional CHROs, right? You've been there for, a century, 25 years, 50 years, knowing policy, IR law, how to govern, how to punish. I'm so going to be killed for this, right? So when your whole world in HR has been about policies and governance and all that, now that's why I started with saying think like a CEO. Now you got to understand the lingo, you got to understand the technology. You don't necessarily need to be a technical person about that, but that's where the inferiority kicks in. So then that's what sitting down and learning, again, unlearning what you've learned and relearning what the future needs becomes the fear factor when you've been doing this for so long and you know this in the back of your hand. And I think that's the biggest challenge I've seen. Once the CHROs have made that flip, that change, then sitting with the CEO, the CSO, strategy officers and the CIOs to be able to have that strategic conversation on technology and stuff that not normally spoken by CHROs gives them a seat at the table.
Right. Thanks, Shah. Thanks. Now let me bring Andrew on board. Who there's this question? We talk about CHRO who's been a C-suite level. Andrew, there's this question talking about digital leaders and digital leadership, right? And how would you actually define digital leadership and how far this has shifted from the usual notions of leadership itself?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think. Probably okay. Let me approach it this way. I think when we talk digital leadership, I think we're looking at probably a few different levels. I think one is really the C-suite, right? I've come across leaders who are very technologically savvy. I mean, they know all the technical jargons. They're also quite schooled in around the technology aspect. But on the other hand, there's also the need to be very strong into the business acumen and the business savviness. So it's the ability to link these two together, the understanding of business context and issues, and knowing how technology plays a role to further enhance the business or creating a different business model. So in order to be successful or to have, he has that vision of how the business will evolve, how the business will look like with some of the technologies that's coming on board. It's not about just jumping into the newest and best sexy digital technology that's available, but how does that link to his business and how he wants to bring the business forward. I've seen a lot of organizations who think they are digital because they created an app. But what does an app have to do if you can't contextualize in terms of either creating a better customer experience, linking it to their products and services, linking to their ability to serve a customer better? I think all this has to be thought out with a certain vision of how the business will grow. And all that will need a certain skill sets of the leaders to have the right vision, to have the right agility and curiosity of the technology that's in place in order to drive the business. So it's a combination of both, not either one of it, but how do we bring these two together in order to create that synergy and that vision that the organization wants to move forward to.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. Now, there's this question about, how does this survey going to be beneficial for the participating organizations, and what will be the expected results that one can actually achieve by participating in this survey? Maybe at this point, let me bring on board Dr. Stan, who perhaps maybe share a little bit more on that front.
Yeah, the journey needs to start from somewhere, okay? And this report actually will help all participating companies to understand what is the current maturity state of their respective organizations and what are the tips, and steps needed in order to progress. All the reports will be customized based on whatever the participants actually they're going to respond. For this reason, we would like at least 5, let's say, from each organization in order to fill the survey, and that will be the benefit actually that they are going to get. And of course, there will be some industry benchmarks in order to see, depending on the industry of the organization, what is the competition actually is doing.
Right, thanks. How we can create a data team to drive this culture. Perhaps maybe let me go to Shah.
Yeah, I could potentially answer even Grace Liao's question along with that. And then Stam can add on if required. We could speak about these from the back of our hand. We worked with one of the largest oil and gas company in this region, yeah? And they started the journey to become data-driven like 2 years ago. And what they did was, of course, they all had an analytic team, a data science team that's pretty strong. And very quickly they realized that, nobody wanted to share data. Okay, so the chief data scientist struggled with that. So what the MD or the CEO did was they started the journey, and very simple, right? Got the 50% of the organization very excited with simple things like, please enroll yourself with data storytelling. Please enroll yourself for visualization class using Excel. And he started the journey for 9 months. Everybody went through that. And it was almost seamless. It's like going for an Excel training. And while they were doing that, when everybody started applying data in their normal world, right? Just Excel and PowerPoint and how you tell stories. And what they did was they got the C-levels together and started putting in strategy. What are the data projects they want to do in the company? And then they brought them together and got the line managers now to run the project. So what happens when you do that? When everybody speaks the language and then you got a strategy in place, the line managers now, I need to do this project. Do you have this data? Right? And they started getting together, and they got 3 times more the revenue they spent on this whole strategy. But you know what was the most amazing part that I didn't see coming? That for many, many years, their employee engagement index just hit the roof to 84%, highest ever in global. They have achieved that, and the headquarters have decided to make the program as an employee retention, strategy, which we never saw that coming. That was like a nice flip side. But I think that's what happens when you engage and people start. Data culture is not something you do. It's a 3-year transformation, right? You get a chief transformation officer and then he will drive it for 3 years, no more, because your children's education is no more the same. Your job and my job is no more the same, and the company we're working for might or might not be there tomorrow. So when you have a lifelong change that's going to happen, then the change has to be so seamless and exciting at the same time.
One for Andrew. What is the biggest challenge companies see in building a digitally competent workforce?
Okay, very good question. Right, I mean, from my perspective, I've seen organizations trying to make the transformation, and of course, during my presentation, I think people was one of the major barriers. I think we can look at it a couple of levels. I mean, I don't think you don't need everybody to understand Python or something like that, or skill sets. But I think if you can profile the kind of different levels of the workforce, I think there's some basic literacy, digital literacy that's required in order to build your workforce towards. So I think basic literacy around the ability to interpret data, the ability to look at what to look for the data, and so forth. So it's ability to have that baseline digital literacy. Now, to be fair, maybe not everyone in the whole organization can do it. So there are some people who are a bit more digitally, or we have a more digital attitude, or they have a more digital mindset to be adopt it a lot quicker than the rest. So it doesn't mean the rest can't, but at least you move a larger population of people who can move forward with those mindset. And if you can profile that group, I think there's a very good pool of the workforce that could be then skilled towards a little more digital talent, more skills around some of the programming or more advanced digital skill sets. I think those are the two key ones at the major workforce. But I think the leadership part is very important. So do you have the leaders that encourage, like Shah was sharing, to engage employees towards this whole digital journey, the ability to provide the space for experimenting. I talk about the culture of fear of failure, and I want to bring it back again. I didn't have the time to talk about it, but this question is a good one to bring it back, because I think the whole culture, the fear of failure is very important, because everyone wants to be successful. But in a digital culture, I mean, experimenting, innovating is going to be critical, because you're not going to get 10 of your stuff correct. So if you can get 2 or 3, I think it's a huge leap towards getting there. So the ability of managers to actually have those kind of skill set and community to mobilize the workforce towards being more innovative without the fear of failure being branded as a failure, but a failure being an experiment that could succeed in the future and learn from it. I think that is just as important. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Andrew. Why is adoption so low as what we saw from the Gartner's report? How can we then facilitate better adoption? Maybe I bring it back to Shah itself, or Andrew. Any of you can answer this question.
That's a very good point, Alvin, because that I would complement Andrew's point, right? But we have seen it in one of the largest banks that spent a lot on upskilling, and then these guys were like, put back in the organization, right? And remember when I spoke about the CHRO, when you have a short-term goal and a long-term goal, when your boss needs to hit your 1 million KPI revenue this month, and here you come and say, oh, I want to try data analytics experimenting, right? And they go like, no, I don't care. I need to reach my KPI. But instead of thinking that how we can use analytics to reach that 1 million ringgit in revenue that I need to get. So that is why the alignment of the senior leadership, the N-1, the N-2, N-3, understand how to apply data analytics to get a better output than they would have done normally, because people don't like changes, right? I'd rather do Excel the way I do than learn Python would potentially down the road would would halfen the time off I'm doing. But I know how to use Python, Excel, and Python will take months for me to learn. So change is always human beings' way to resist. But the alignment is why the DDO becomes really important, is to know the C levels, to know where is the break, who is not getting it, why this team, which leadership is not understanding why their role is important in this. So I think, it works in all ways, right? Upskilling, and then you don't have leadership, digital leadership, or leaders who understand why the strategy is important, then again, it crumples, it fails.
Yeah, thanks.
Let me add on it. I think it's an interesting question. To me, I've observed in management meetings, in a client setting, as well as some of the work that I've done, is that you have a bunch of, you have a leader sitting in a room trying to make a decision. And half the time they actually trust their gut feel, or they trust their business instinct, or they trust their experience of 20 years. When the data is shown by a team of analysts or maybe data scientists that comes in, which challenges their belief, or challenges their experience, they kind of reject it. And I think sometimes it's really around, do they trust the data or do they trust themselves, right? Yeah. And if you don't trust the data, what's wrong with the data? And I find that from that end back, some of the data scientists that comes out with the data do not have the business context understanding to validate the data. So it becomes a data based on numbers and percentage, but it's not contextualized to the sense that how the business leaders would view it and to relate to it. So I guess it's a meeting of both, because the leaders will need to understand a bit more of the data, the source of the data, how the data are interrelated and correlated. And for the data scientists to really understand the business a bit more to validate what they're presenting, right? So that the trust is being built that, yes, I understand the data, but I think it makes sense for the business angle because I think there's some element of truth and I trust the data source as well. But if you don't have that, I think that's going to be this whole kind of, trust equation that's probably going to be a challenge.
Right. The CEOs love to say, so what, right?
Yeah, so what? Yeah, so what? I've all this number, so what, right?
Yeah. So what? Yeah.
Great, thanks. Now, on that note of trust, other than trust itself, what other key competencies are really needed to build data literacy, especially here in the workforce here in Singapore? And on that note itself, how do we actually stand out to other countries as based on your vast experience itself? Shah, would you like to take that question?
You said it right? Why would there be a trust issue? A trust issue is there because if you shove it down someone's throat and tell them this needs to be done, and if people don't understand the why, and probably they know the how, but the why, and you always gonna go like it's gonna be the flavor of the month, and next week they're gonna ask something else. And here you're gonna please your boss doing something you have no idea why we're doing that, right? But I think engagement and involvement without expectations, I think it's very important. Like some of my clients have done is they would run guru shows, get business people to come in and just talk. And when you keep hearing the same mantra in different angle, people get a bit like hyped, right? And then if you have a common goal, like people have, like going into war, if you have a common enemy, you unite the team. And that's what the oil and gas did, right? They kind of created a rara and a common goal, and people knew the why and they were excited. Even the smallest thing, the littlest thing they could do. And some organizations have a bigger scale, right? Some financial institution when like X amount of people, we cannot carry the weight, right? We help you upskill so we can outskill you. And scare, the scare, it's true. You can only do what you can do, right? So I think the engagement, whether it's bad news or good news, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of, it's like campaigning for an election. People need to walk and rah-rah and talk, and every level, even your driver should be talking about it. Sure. Even if he does not know why it's important to use Waze as part of, the driving skills. Yes. That is important to get digital, yeah?
All right.
I just want to touch, I mean, I shall explain it quite well, but I want to touch on a point around the whole way that organizations are setting that up. I think if I look at the data literacy and also the data competency set, I've seen organizations started to integrate what we call a center for a COE for data, a chief data officer, right? And they do have that at enterprise level, where the key functions of some of the chief data officer and the function of this unit is really to provide the best practice algorithms, the more complex cases is handled at this level, where the accessibility of data is sanctioned by the CEO himself to actually get access. Because a lot of times we see that accessibility is one issue. And I've seen organizations park the data officer or data unit under the chief legal department. And if you look at parking under chief legal department, what does it show? It shows compliance, it shows governance. So at the end of the day, rather than using data, you're actually protecting the data so that you and govern the data, because I guess a lot of PDPA and all these things are coming on. You don't actually use the data, so you're stopping people from using the data.
Yeah.
So I think these are some of the challenges in terms of where do you park this and creating this unit that's ability to have access data, do the complex, given the skill to create complex algorithms and tools to be able to support the unit. So I do see in this case some centralization of the function of the expertise is required, and probably you do need another level which is more operational, where you can actually apply some of the more simple tools to the business unit, because you need more front-end support to your customer service guys or your risk management people in the risk. But I do see these three things a bit interesting in terms of structure and capability development at the center, the ability to park it there and give access to people who actually do need it. And also, of course, you have to have the baseline protection of the data protection and PDP there, but how do you then work around providing that some access on top of that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, sorry, one more thing. The difference between IT governance and data governance is going to be a bit different.
Oh, spot on.
IT governance is around cybersecurity, yes, by great walls, but data governance is a very different issue. So I think that's sometimes we get gray between the two areas, and that's where no one can touch the data, no one can get access to the data.
Exactly. One last question: is there space for the SME sector to play? Must it be a big boys game in this front? Stan, you want to take this question?
Yeah, I will start. Actually, yes, it is very important to stress to everybody that becoming a data-driven organization is for everybody. Okay, because I sort of mentioned this during my presentation that technology is very cheap at the moment. The offerings from cloud providers actually is really affordable. Okay, you don't really have to invest a lot of money from the technology point of view in order to start the journey. Okay, and for this, basically the SMEs, they don't really have to be afraid of anything like that. And if they can start with a cheap approach, and the cheap approach, of course, involves upskilling, identifying suitable people within the organization that actually can become part of the data team. Then they can upskill themselves, okay, learning Python and all the other analytical stuff, machine learning, etc., that is needed. And of course, they're going to use the data in order to generate insights that will help immediately whatever is their business function and whatever is the SMEs are working on. Very simple to do.
Thank you. Andrew, Shah, any last words? Is it a big boys game?
Well, I mean, to me, I think I don't think it's a big boys game. I think small organizations have a greater flexibility to be able to adopt and to be agile enough to adopt some of these technologies. Obviously, of course, funding and resourcing is slightly will be the challenge. But I think with the availability of data and how the price has actually kind of dovetailed a lot different from before, ability to have a network of organizations supporting it I think it's a lot of beneficial, it's a lot faster and quicker if organizations can have a smaller organization have a good vision of where they want to go. I think the ability to move and mobilize their resources is a lot quicker than some of the larger organizations.
Right.
So my take, Alvin, I mean, GE, after 100 over years, has fallen off the Fortune 500 list.
Yeah.
And WhatsApp, that has 11 employees, was bought over for $1 billion, right?
Yes.
SME versus MNC. So my point is SMEs are much more agile, and the way that the stimulus package has worked in every country, the government is encouraging SMEs to be digital, to take data-driven as a very important step in order to stay relevant post-COVID-19. And I think that is a very strong message given out by every government in every country in this ASEAN. And I think there's a reason for that. Because you got to embrace this, you might cease to exist if I were to scare you. But what is the amazing part you could do is you would have an opportunity to grow your business in ways that you wouldn't have not thought.